Joan Rivers was a woman who built a career on making people laugh, but was she also hiding secrets no one expected? For decades, she captivated audiences with her razor-sharp wit, unfiltered humor, and fearless personality. Yet, beneath the glitz, fame, and countless punchlines, there was a side of Joan Rivers that remained unseen. Now, a decade after her passing, her daughter, Melissa Rivers, has come forward with long-kept secrets, revelations that offer a more complex and deeply personal portrait of the legendary comedian. In this exclusive look into Joan Rivers' life, we uncover shocking truths, from her struggles in Hollywood and personal hardships to the unexpected quirks and controversies that shaped her existence. We'll explore the highs and lows of her career, the truth behind her plastic surgeries, and the tragic medical failures that led to her untimely death. Melissa's revelations go beyond preserving her mother's legacy. They expose the raw, unfiltered reality of a woman who was both larger than life and intensely human. What secrets did Joan Rivers never share? What did Melissa uncover that changed everything? Stay with us as we dive deep into the untold story of an icon who redefined comedy and left behind a lasting legacy. Joan Rivers was more than just a comedian. She was a trailblazer who reshaped the landscape of entertainment. Born as Joan Alexandra Malinsky in Brooklyn on June 8, 1933, she grew up in a family that valued education and ambition. A standout student, she graduated from Barnard College with a degree in English literature, but the allure of show business proved too strong to resist. In the male-dominated comedy world of the 1960s, Joan carved a path for herself with her sharp tongue, fearless humor, and willingness to tackle taboo topics. Her big break came in 1965 when she appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, a moment that changed her life overnight. Carson, impressed by her comedic timing and wit, declared her a star. From there, Joan's career took off. She became a household name with her own television specials, numerous talk show appearances, and a string of successful comedy albums. But Joan Rivers was not just about making people laugh. She was an astute businesswoman who ventured into screenwriting, directing, and producing. Her ability to reinvent herself kept her relevant for decades, allowing her to remain a significant force in Hollywood. Despite her success, Joan's journey was anything but smooth. She faced criticism, industry setbacks, and personal struggles that would have broken many. But Joan was relentless, never allowing obstacles to define her. She fought her way through the ups and downs of the entertainment industry, proving time and again that resilience and reinvention were her greatest strengths. This unwavering determination made her an icon, not just in comedy, but in the broader world of entertainment. Joan Rivers' career was a roller coaster of soaring successes and crushing failures. At her peak, she was a dominant figure in comedy, admired for her fearless jokes and rapid-fire delivery. But the path to success was not always smooth. One of the most defining moments of her career came in the late 1980s when she attempted to challenge The Tonight Show by launching her own late-night talk show on Fox. It was a bold and risky move, one that would ultimately cost her dearly. Her show, The Late Show starring Joan Rivers, was meant to be a groundbreaking venture, but it struggled with ratings and was canceled after just 1 year. This failure was compounded by a devastating personal blow. Johnny Carson, her former mentor and the man who had once called her a star, saw her new show as an act of betrayal. He never spoke to her again, effectively blacklisting her from The Tonight Show for decades. This was a painful period for Joan, both professionally and personally, but she refused to be defeated. In 1989, she made a triumphant comeback with The Joan Rivers Show, a daytime talk show that won her a Daytime Emmy Award in 1990. She continued to reinvent herself, finding success as a fashion critic on Fashion Police and revolutionizing red carpet commentary. Her ability to bounce back after setbacks was nothing short of remarkable. Joan Rivers embodied perseverance, showing the world that even after the biggest failures, it was possible to rise again. She never let rejection define her, proving that her greatest strength was her ability to keep going, no matter what life threw at her. Joan Rivers' death in 2014 was as shocking as it was heartbreaking. What was supposed to be a routine throat procedure turned into a fatal tragedy, leaving the world in mourning. She had visited a Manhattan clinic for a simple endoscopy, a procedure that should have been low risk. However, a series of medical errors led to catastrophic consequences. Shortly after the procedure began, Joan stopped breathing. Despite emergency efforts, she suffered brain hypoxia, a severe lack of oxygen to the brain, and was placed on life support. Days later, she passed away at the age of 81. The aftermath of her death sparked widespread outrage. An investigation into the clinic revealed numerous violations, including a failure to monitor her vital signs, anesthesia errors, and even unauthorized procedures performed without Joan's consent. One of the most shocking discoveries was that some of the doctors had taken selfies with Joan while she was unconscious, an act that underscored the gross negligence at play. Determined to seek justice, Melissa Rivers filed a lawsuit against the clinic, which ultimately resulted in a settlement in 2016. However, for Melissa, this was never about financial compensation. It was about holding the medical establishment accountable and ensuring that such mistakes were never repeated. She became an advocate for stricter regulations in outpatient surgical centers, using her platform to push for better patient safety laws. Joan Rivers' death was a tragic end to a life filled with vibrancy, humor, and resilience. Yet, in her passing, she left behind an important lesson, not just about the fragility of life, but also about the importance of medical accountability. Her legacy endures, not only in the laughter she brought to millions, but in the changes her daughter helped bring to the healthcare system. Joan Rivers built her career on sharp humor, but her relationship with the truth was anything but straightforward. She was known for blending reality with exaggeration, often embellishing stories for comedic effect. This approach wasn't just a performance tactic, it was a fundamental part of her personality. Whether it was her personal achievements, her experiences in Hollywood, or even her own life history, Joan had a knack for bending the truth to entertain her audience. One of the most famous examples of this was her interview with Howard Stern, where she claimed that someone had died during a Roman dinner at a restaurant in New York. The story was shocking and had all the dramatic elements of a sensational tale. However, when the restaurant later denied that such an event had ever occurred, Joan laughed it off and continued with her usual sharp wit. Even when confronted with the facts, she never hesitated to play with the narrative, making it even funnier in the process. Beyond her storytelling, Joan's portrayal of herself was often an exaggerated version of reality. She once claimed to be a member of the prestigious Greek honor society Phi Beta Kappa, an assertion that was later debunked. But for Joan, these fabrications were not about deceit, they were about showmanship. In her eyes, the truth was malleable, something that could be adjusted to make life more entertaining. Her daughter, Melissa Rivers, later reflected on this in interviews, acknowledging that her mother's version of reality was often a little more colorful than the truth. But despite this tendency to stretch facts, Joan was never dishonest about the things that truly mattered. She was open about her insecurities, her struggles, and her relentless ambition. In the end, her approach to the truth was part of what made her such a captivating figure. Whether she was telling real stories or ones with a comedic twist, Joan Rivers always left her audience entertained, and that, above all, was her ultimate goal. The bond between Joan Rivers and her daughter, Melissa Rivers, was one of the most significant and complex relationships in Joan's life. While their public image often showed them as a close and loving mother-daughter duo, their relationship was not without its challenges. Growing up as Joan Rivers' daughter meant living under the shadow of a strong, opinionated, and often unpredictable mother, something that Melissa would later admit was both a privilege and a burden. One of the most difficult periods in their relationship came after the tragic suicide of Joan's husband and Melissa's father, Edgar Rosenberg, in 1987. The shock and grief tore the family apart, and Melissa, then a young adult, found herself directing her anger toward her mother. For a time, they stopped speaking, and their relationship remained strained. Joan, devastated by both the loss of her husband and the distance from her daughter, later admitted that it was one of the darkest moments of her life. Despite these hardships, Joan and Melissa eventually found their way back to each other. Their reconciliation was not just about family ties. It was also built on mutual respect and shared ambitions. Over the years, they worked together on multiple projects, including their reality show Joan and Melissa, Joan Knows Best, and co-hosting Fashion Police. Their dynamic on screen reflected their real-life bond, full of humor, occasional clashes, but always grounded in love. Melissa later revealed in interviews that Joan was a tough mother, one who had high expectations and pushed her to be independent. At times, Joan's parenting style could be blunt and even unorthodox, but there was never a moment when she didn't support her daughter's ambitions. In her memoir, Melissa acknowledged that despite their differences, the one thing that always remained constant was their love for each other. Their relationship was proof that even through loss, disagreements, and time apart, the bond between a mother and daughter can endure. Joan Rivers was never afraid to speak her mind, and in Hollywood, that meant making both friends and enemies. Her brutally honest humor often put her at odds with other celebrities, leading to feuds that sometimes lasted for years. At the same time, there were surprising friendships that revealed a different side of the comedian, one that many people never saw. One of the most well-known tensions in Joan's career was with Elizabeth Taylor. Joan frequently joked about Taylor's fluctuating weight, making the actress a frequent target of her stand-up routines. While some assumed there was real animosity between them, the truth was more complicated. Despite Joan's relentless jokes, she and Elizabeth Taylor actually had a deep respect for each other. They even worked together to raise funds for AIDS research, showing that behind the sharp jabs, Joan was capable of genuine kindness and philanthropy. Another significant fallout in her life was with Johnny Carson. After appearing on The Tonight Show in 1965, Joan became one of Carson's favorite guests, and he played a pivotal role in launching her career. However, their relationship took a tragic turn when Joan accepted an offer to host her own late-night talk show on Fox. Carson saw this as a betrayal, and from that moment on, he never spoke to her again. The fallout devastated Joan, and she often spoke about how painful it was to be cut off by her mentor. While she had her fair share of conflicts, Joan also formed deep and unexpected friendships. She was close to many fellow comedians, including Kathy Griffin and Don Rickles, who appreciated her fearless humor and unfiltered honesty. Her friendships revealed that while she was known for her sharp tongue, she also had a warm and loyal side to those she cared about. Joan Rivers may have been a polarizing figure in Hollywood, but one thing was certain: whether she was making friends or enemies, she never went unnoticed. Her legacy in entertainment was built on her willingness to say what others wouldn't, a trait that made her both loved and feared. Joan Rivers was one of the few celebrities who openly discussed her love for cosmetic surgery. While many stars in Hollywood tried to hide their procedures, Joan embraced her transformations with humor, often turning her surgeries into a running joke in her stand-up routines. She once quipped, "I've had so much plastic surgery, when I die, they will donate my body to Tupperware." Her self-deprecating approach made her one of the most outspoken advocates of cosmetic enhancements, but the true extent of her procedures remained a mystery, until Melissa Rivers revealed shocking details after her mother's passing. For years, speculation ran wild about how many procedures Joan had undergone. Some believed she had a few facelifts, others guessed dozens. However, in her memoir, Joan Rivers, Tales of Mirth, Mischief, and Manipulation, Melissa disclosed that her mother had undergone no fewer than 365 cosmetic procedures throughout her lifetime. This revelation stunned even Joan's most devoted fans, as it was far more than anyone had imagined. The surgeries included facelifts, Botox injections, nose jobs, lip enhancements, and even more minor touch-ups. Essentially, something for every day of the year. But Joan's obsession with plastic surgery wasn't just about vanity. Deep down, it stemmed from deep-seated insecurities about her appearance. She grew up in an era where women were judged harshly on their looks, and she always felt she didn't meet Hollywood's conventional beauty standards. Her desire to alter her face was, in part, an attempt to control how she was perceived in an industry that valued youth and perfection. Despite the sheer number of procedures, Joan never let them define her. Towards the later years of her life, Melissa noted that Joan seemed to have finally reached a level of satisfaction with her appearance. She continued to joke about her surgeries, but there was a sense of peace in how she carried herself. Ultimately, her openness about plastic surgery changed the conversation around cosmetic enhancements, making it less taboo and more about personal choice. Joan Rivers may have had an ever-changing face, but one thing remained constant: her unapologetic honesty about the process. Joan Rivers had a taste for the finer things in life, and she made no apologies for it. She believed in surrounding herself with luxury, often saying, "Money can't buy happiness, but it sure helps." From high-end fashion to exquisite jewelry, Joan was a woman who lived extravagantly and took immense pride in her collection of designer clothing and accessories. After her passing, an auction of her estate raised a staggering $24 million, a testament to her lavish lifestyle. But Joan's love for luxury wasn't just about possessions, it was also about experiences. She adored first-class travel, fine dining, and hosting extravagant parties for her closest friends. She believed that if she worked hard, she deserved to enjoy the fruits of her labor. In many ways, her love for opulence was an extension of her larger-than-life personality. Beyond the glamour, Joan had some truly bizarre habits that only close friends and family knew about. One of the most surprising revelations from Melissa Rivers was how her mother hid money in empty Milk Duds boxes while traveling. Joan believed that no one would ever think to look inside a candy box for cash, so she used them as a makeshift safe. This habit was so ingrained that after her passing, Melissa found hidden stashes of money in unexpected places throughout Joan's apartment. Another peculiar quirk was Joan's unconventional travel kit. She always carried a Ziploc bag with slices of bacon and a vial of fake blood in her purse. Why? Because in the event of a plane hijacking, she believed she could use the fake blood to stage an emergency and distract the hijackers. While it may sound absurd, it was a glimpse into Joan's ever-vigilant mindset. She was always prepared for anything, even in the most extreme situations. Despite her extravagant tastes and eccentric habits, Joan Rivers remained refreshingly down-to-earth in many ways. She loved a good bargain, took pride in her ability to find the best sales, and never hesitated to give away expensive gifts to friends. Her life was a blend of luxury, humor, and practicality, an unusual combination that made her all the more fascinating. For a woman who seemed fearless on stage, Joan Rivers had her fair share of anxieties and unexpected fears. While she exuded confidence in her public persona, those closest to her knew that she was deeply concerned about security, health, and unexpected disasters. Her paranoia was not just a quirk, it was a way of life. Joan was obsessed with safety, to the point where she developed elaborate escape plans for emergencies. She always kept a flashlight by her bedside, had an emergency exit strategy for every room in her house, and even owned multiple phones in case one failed. When traveling, she would inspect hotel rooms meticulously, ensuring there were no hidden cameras or potential security risks. One of her most unusual fears involved air travel. While she frequently flew around the world for work, she never fully trusted airplanes. To prepare for the worst, she carried an emergency kit that included fake blood, believing she could fake an injury to gain sympathy or create a diversion if needed. This odd but strategic approach to crisis management was something she took seriously, even though it often became the subject of her own jokes. Joan was also deeply superstitious. She avoided certain numbers, refused to stay on the 13th floor of hotels, and carried lucky charms with her at all times. She had an unusual relationship with death. She joked about it constantly, yet she meticulously planned her own funeral down to the smallest detail. She wanted it to be a grand affair, with humor at its core. In her book, she wrote, "When I die, I want my funeral to be a huge showbiz affair with lights, cameras, action. I want Meryl Streep crying in 5 different accents." Despite these fears, Joan Rivers never let them stop her from living life to the fullest. She channeled her anxieties into humor, making light of her own paranoia in a way that made people laugh. At the end of the day, her quirks and fears were part of what made her so endearing, proof that even the boldest people have their own vulnerabilities. Losing Joan Rivers was not just a personal loss for Melissa Rivers, It was a loss for the entire entertainment world. But instead of letting grief consume her, Melissa made it her mission to honor her mother's legacy in a meaningful way. After Joan's passing, Melissa chose to share her mother's memory with close friends in a way that was both sentimental and unconventional. She divided Joan's ashes and sent them to people across the world, including friends in England, Scotland, Mexico, Wyoming, and California. Some of Joan's ashes even ended up in unexpected places, such as film studios and department stores, a fitting tribute to a woman who lived a life larger than most. Melissa also kept a personal piece of her mother close to her heart, literally. She kept a portion of Joan's ashes in her closet, right next to her shoes, a place where Joan would have likely approved. Alongside this, Melissa received a heartfelt letter from President Barack Obama, who acknowledged Joan Rivers' impact on American culture and comedy. It was a touching tribute from the highest office in the country, a testament to how deeply Joan's humor had resonated with people from all walks of life. Melissa's book, The Last Girl Before the Freeway: The Life, Loves, Losses, and Liberation of Joan Rivers, offered the most intimate look into Joan's life, showcasing both the comedy and the pain that defined her journey. By sharing these memories, Melissa ensured that Joan Rivers' legacy would live on, not just as a comedian, but as a force of nature who refused to be forgotten. Even in death, Joan Rivers continued to surprise, inspire, and bring laughter to those who loved her. Her life was a reminder that humor can be a powerful tool to navigate even the most difficult moments. A lesson Melissa carries forward in her mother's honor. Joan Rivers was more than a comedy icon. She was a force of nature who shattered barriers, challenged norms, and left an indelible mark on entertainment. Her fearless humor, resilience, and unapologetic personality continue to inspire. Through Melissa Rivers' revelations, we see the woman behind the jokes, complex, ambitious, and deeply human. Her legacy reminds us to embrace life fully, laugh through hardships, and never fear reinvention. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like, comment, and subscribe for more legendary stories. Let's celebrate Joan's spirit by finding humor in every moment. Until next time, keep laughing and living boldly.